Hello everyone, welcome to the Shishir Wadhvan podcast. And today we have Ree, with whom I'll be talking about storytelling, about different aspect of storytelling, and especially visual storytelling. So I would like Ree to introduce herself, and we will go ahead.
Perfect. Hi, Shishir. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Sorry?
Shishir? Is that how you
Yeah,
say your
Shishir,
name?
Shishir,
Shishir.
Shishir.
Okay, my name is Ray, and I am a visual storyteller, like Shishir said. I am currently based in South Korea, but I was born and raised in the United States. And I am currently, or I was an educator for about 15 years, but all of my academic training and a lot of my professional experience is in photography and filmmaking.
Okay, so my first question to you is what does it mean, visual storyteller? Who is called a visual storyteller?
That's a great question. So I think visual storytellers include lots of if we're answering the question from a brain perspective, I think a visual storyteller is somebody who sees visual images in their mind or who kind of have like a cinematography or like a they see kind of moving images in their mind or they see patterns and they solve problems through images or uh, through visual elements. So from a brain perspective, I would say that. But then from like a career perspective, I would say people like graphic designers, artists, sculptors, filmmakers, um, anyone who creates media or creates something uh, visually, I guess. And then the storytelling aspect, I think, is if you can sequence those visual ideas or visual images in a way that tells a story or can inspire other people um, using a type of sequencing that brings emotions together. Yeah, that's a very, I guess, convoluted way of saying. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it makes sense, and I think, and you said about like visuals, you see patterns. So, like in daily life, we see a lot of shapes. And one second, I'm sorry, one second. कौन है?
Also, I just realized my card is full, so I don't know at what point our audio got cut off. So I'm putting in a new card, and so How many podcasts have you recorded so far? Or podcast episodes on your podcast have you recorded so far?
I have recorded around three or four episodes by now.
Got it. And do you like podcasting?
Yes, I would say I like asking questions. So that's I'm using podcasting to do that.
Yeah, I really like asking questions too. And so being the person who is answering questions is always harder for
Yeah.
me, but it's also, I'm trying to get used to it. I'm trying to get better at it. Okay, it seems like my recording is back. But I'm not sure if I gathered some of the questions before. I hope that's okay.
Oh, no problem. So you said one thing that as a visual storyteller, you see a lot of patterns in your mind and visualize it. So in our daily life, we see a lot of shapes, we see a lot of colors, we saw a lot of visuals. So if I am a storyteller, can I know what this shape or visuals is trying to make me feel? Because we subconsciously, when we see some colors or shapes, we don't know what we are feeling. We feel something subconsciously. So as a visual storyteller, can I find that thing, that what this shape or visuals or colors trying to make me feel?
That's a great question. And so the way that I like to think about it is that language is very standardized, whereas I think visual language is still very subjective. So I can confirm what I am saying and thinking through words, but it's harder to confirm what someone is thinking or saying through images. And so I think every person uses visual elements using their own way of categorizing the world. And so if I look at someone like Vincent van Gogh, right? Or Picasso, or I guess like if I'm just thinking of painters like Piet Mondrian, like Mondrian, he thinks of the world. He uses red, the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow, because he believes that those are the truest colors, and that he uses lines going up and across because those are the pure directions. And so, like, if we look at his works, his earlier works, they look more realistic. But as he started to formulate his own philosophy about the world, he started being recognized, and he only drew those lines and with those colors, right? And so that's him. But if we look at someone like Vincent van Gogh, he uses a variety of different greens and yellows and blues and reds, um, and so for him, like, he sees the world very differently. And so, I mean, those are just two examples. So for me, I would say that um, I use colors very specifically. And so the color red, like the reddish pink that I use, symbolizes me for a variety of reasons. And then I also use a very like a very bright limeish, cool green, and that's kind of to symbolize like how I see the world is like through a lens, right? And so like the colors that I use have very specific meaning to me, and also I imagine that the colors that other people use have different meaning for them as well. And I could talk about shapes, but I feel like it's going to have a similar philosophy to mine with colors. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. You said that if suppose like it feels different people will feel different. Okay, suppose there is piece of art. If I am seeing it, so I may interpret a different meaning and other person can find different meaning. And so what's the reason behind it? As far as I observe, that maybe uh, they are finding themselves in the painting, or something which is triggering or making them feel their journey or their life which they have felt as a child or as an adult. Now they are finding that thing, and we have different life, so that's why we find different meaning in the same piece of art. So is it right way to think about this?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I studied art in college, and one of the texts that I had to read sort of helped me understand this deeper. And there's a text, or okay, there's a phrase that Marcel Duchamp uses, and it's called the art coefficient. And essentially, he says that we, as the artist, have our own way of thinking about the work that we create. But once that art goes out into the world, anybody's emotion to it, reaction to it, understanding of it, interpretation of it, meaning of it, it does not have to be the same interpretation that the artist has from their own work. So anybody can interpret it. And I largely feel that way about visual language and visual storytelling, is that we all have our own ways of, there's so much that we express from our own lives and philosophies into shapes, colors, and sequences. And if somebody else looks at our works, they're going to have different understanding based on their own lives, their own philosophies, and their own culture. And as we live in a world that's more, I guess it's like we're globalizing. And so there's so many more cultures and different languages, and just so many different departure points. And so it's impossible for, not impossible, but you know, it's very rare that you and I are going to interpret a painting almost exactly the same way as the other person, or not just
Okay.
paintings, but everything.
So we talked about artist over here. So when I was in my 11th standard, there was a literature class, and we were studying about English chapters. So my English teacher said that when you will read about these authors and poets, you will find that every writer and every poet has experienced some kind of tragedy or some kind of pain in their life. Every writer, every poet, and I guarantee you that I was curious to know. So I searched all those poets and writers, and I found, yes, someone, they had really tough life, and they turned that thing into art. But this was just a sentence for me. But now as I'm growing, I'm finding a lot of people, and I'm experiencing this thing. So my question to you is it true, or does it really happen that if you are an artist, you have experience, we all experience some some bad time, okay, hard times. But what makes you an artist? If I connect this hard time to the journey of being an artist, what kind of relationship artist has with these pains and tragedies or hard times?
Mm. So the question that I'm hearing, the way that I'm interpreting your question is, what are the what sorts of tragedies or traumas from my life has influenced my life trajectory as an artist? Is that kind
Yes,
of the question?
yes, you can answer that. It will give me my answer. Yeah.
um, I definitely would think so. If I look at all of the art that I have ever created, or the art that I would like to create in the future, or the stories that I have told, and the stories that I am telling, and the stories that I would like to tell in the future, I would say that it's all informed by the struggles and pains that I had as a child and then up to now. So I would say that the I think have experienced a lot of childhood traumas, um, and I think those largely inform what I choose to create visually and also through stories, through written stories. And I also write fiction, and I notice that all the fiction that I write is based on those those difficulties that I had throughout my life. And so, to be more specific, I think they're related to neurodiversity through the lack of Asian representation while growing up in the United States. And I would also say cultural differences between my Korean family's values and also my American values growing up in the United States. And I think those are the three biggest pain points in my life that I think I draw into my work.
Okay, okay, that's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for answering it. So, so does being an artist heals those traumas?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I think that, so a lot of people think, okay, so I'm going to deviate from your question a little bit. So if I go too far out, feel free to bring me back in.
Okay.
But so, like, a lot of people think that, so let's say you hurt your head and you are bleeding, right? And everybody is going to notice. You are going to notice because it's painful. And if you don't recognize the pain, or or it doesn't bother you as much, somebody else is going to notice it, and they're going to ask you, don't you are do you need to go to the hospital? Like, you're bleeding from your head. Are you sure you're okay? But if we are emotionally or spiritually or mentally or psychologically hurt, only we know. And or not only we know, but it's less obvious to the world that we're suffering from these things. And I think with physical traumas and physical pain, you have to address it before you move on, or else your body might not make it, and therefore your mind will not make it. But when your mind is hurt, you think you can keep going, but then stuff starts to come up, like anxiety or depression, or stress related chronic diseases, diabetes. Like, all of these things can happen, and you think, oh, it's just my body deteriorating, but it's all part of your mind too. And I think when you tell stories or when you make art, it's sort of like your mind helping yourself relieve that pain, because you are showing what is hurting you to not only yourself but to other people. And it's only by sharing the struggles that you have, kind of like when people would probably go to the doctor to have that bleeding brain addressed, right? So it's only through the process of sharing and realizing that we all are kind of struggling and we all have similar pain points, And the more we talk about it with other people and know that we're not alone or that we're not weird or strange or bad because we have these issues, when we tell them through stories, it is incredibly healing.
Okay, so thank you again. It's a beautiful answer. For example, now for example, I am turning my art, my pain into an art, and there is a room full of people, and I'm showing my art, whether it's a poem or a writing, something written words or a painting. I'm showing my art. I have turned my pain into that art, and now in full of room, everyone is clapping for my art, and the person who made that art is feeling insidely, he's smiling, but he's feeling insidely that these people are clapping on my pain. So how does artist feel when you are turning your pain into an art, but no, people are seeing that pain, but they are not, uh, they're not caring about it, they are praising that you have pain. If I craft my words this way, they are praising that you have a pain and you are doing this. So how does artist, or how will that person will feel on the stage seeing everyone clapping on his pain?
So that's a really good question. And I think there are many ways that I could answer this. But I think the one that feels intuitively the most relevant to address at this time, I think would be, as I have, so I'm almost 40 years old. And over the past 40 years, I've realized that pain is really difficult to deal with on your own. And the more and more I talk to people, and I realize things get easier when I share my difficult emotions with people. That's kind of when I realize, like, okay, I am not alone. I am, uh, I am not strange. I am not different. I am not. I am worthy. I am valuable. I am part of community. And so I think when I share my work with people, regardless of their reaction, well, actually, if they do praise my work, um, yes, I might feel a certain way, but I think the important thing is that I am sharing how I felt or I'm sharing what I went through, and having that acknowledged, knowing that other people recognize what I've been through, I think that's also part of the healing journey. And so if someone says, and they're praising me for the pain, um, then it's almost kind of like, oh, because I don't think you can recognize, you cannot recognize something that you haven't been through or is within you. And so if I see something that someone created and I go, oh, that's amazing, it's because I understand it. And I can only understand it if I've been through that same thing, uh, or I've seen people that I know have gone through that same thing, and seeing that other person express it, articulate it a certain way. I think that's really where the amazing thing is. And so I think, to sort of recap what I'm trying to say, is that if I see somebody's work and I think that that work is amazing, it could be that I like the colors they used or the shapes they used, or prefer somehow the visual arrangement of what they created. Um, But oftentimes I find that the part of me that wants to praise them is not so much my own visual preferences or my sensory preferences, but the way that they've articulated the pain or they've articulated the struggle. And it's usually when I feel like, oh, they've communicated or they've captured this experience incredibly well or in a new kind of way. I think that's when I praise them. So it's not so much that I'm praising them for what they went through, but how they were able to articulate the experience that they've been through. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
great. Great. So you talked about struggles here. So when if I connect this to social media and content creation, so when should one talk about struggles? Question number one, and how should we talk about it?
Hmm. Well, I think it depends on what our intention is, right? If we just want a lot of attention, um, then I think you can talk about your struggle in the way that captures the most attention, right?
Okay,
Um,
my if my intention is intention if my intention is making people know or that I am coming from there to build a relationship with them. For example, if we are in relationship with someone, we don't tell our struggles on the first day, on the first date, or even month after month. We take time, right? When we are in relationship with someone, we take time, and on someday we decide, okay, I'm going to tell him or her my struggles or my childhood. And now when I'm creating content or building an audience, I want to create some kind of relationship with them. So I'm thinking the same thing which I used to think when I was going to tell my traumas to my partner. But now my partner is everyone who is following me, and I want to talk about it so that my relationship gets stronger. So how should we talk about on social? Because it's a different thing with a partner, with your girlfriend or boyfriend. On online, it's a different game, but the essence is same: building relationship and connection.
so this is you're going to get a very different answer from me, just
Yeah.
because I actually don't enjoy. Um, it's not that I don't enjoy. I'm not capable of having shallow conversations with people. Um, it's very painful for me to talk about the weather with someone or talk about, I don't even know what some small talk things are. And so for me, I go straight into like the really heavy, deep stuff, like on the first conversation. Um, and so, uh, and so I think that's a struggle that I've had my entire life. Is I never know what to say because people are talking about the game, and I'm just like, okay, this seems like a waste of my time. So I'm gonna go find somebody else who wants to talk about our childhood traumas, right? So that's been like a struggle of mine. So it so I think the philosophy is a little different. But to try and answer your question about, how do you build a relationship through storytelling on social media, and I think, like I mentioned, I don't have that ability to just talk about something light. I go straight into, okay, this is the biggest thing that has ever happened to me. Let's talk about that first, right? And so I think that's what's very different about me. Um, I can't just start telling you about my favorite color or, I mean, I guess I could, but that's not the thing that I would like to talk about with a lot of people. I'm just going to go straight into the meaty stuff. And so to build a relationship, I think that I've always been comfortable being very vulnerable. And so Sun Yi, right, he talks a lot about vulnerability and how storytelling is establishing relationships or building relationships, and how storytelling is social currency, right? That's how we uh, interact with people. And if I tie it back to that philosophy, I think with social media, it's really important to make sure that you are being true to what your values are and what your beliefs are, and to not just do things because other people are doing them, but be motivated by having your own purpose. So I know Sunny also says you don't have to find your why, right? And I agree with him in that if it's preventing you from starting, you should not start with your why. You should just start and see where you go. But if you know what your why is, then I think you should lead with that first. And I know what my why is. And I think I know exactly what kind of audience I want to connect with. And if that leaves out a lot of different niche audiences or the broad audience, that's okay with me, because building a following of, or building a huge following or making a lot of money from building a following, like those would be great, but those are not my immediate goals. And so I think when you are building your social media, I think you have to know what your intention is. If your intention really is to just get a lot of followers and have a lot of attention, then yes, feel free to do what is trending. But I think if your goal is to build an audience around a shared belief or a shared vision for the future, then I think you have to lead with that and tell the stories that you think are most relevant to share surrounding that shared vision. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Okay. So, what my question to you? We talked about stories. So, according to you, what makes a great story?
So for me, I think a great story is one that shares a sincere human experience. And a lot of people say, like, okay, scratch that. So I think for me, a good story is one that allows you to tell a human experience that only that is unique to you. Um, and in saying that, I think a good story is one that is very honest, and it's not, and that you shouldn't be afraid to share stories that are not already told. I think when I was first telling stories, I was telling stories about topics and trends that were popular, that other people were talking about. And that's because I was afraid that if I told the stories that I've actually experienced in my life, that people would think that I was weird or that I was strange, or that I was not cool, or yeah, that I was weird. But then I started telling stories that actually happened to me, and those are the ones that felt really real. And I think when people started hearing stories that I told that were uniquely my own experiences about things that were not very trendy, that's when people realized it takes a lot of courage. And it's through that courage of it's through that courage of being able to share stories that are not popular or trending,
Okay, so in this journey, while thinking about telling your stories, have you ever felt this way, that what if people won't resonate with my story? Have you ever felt this?
Yes, and I feel that all the time. And I'm realizing that if people don't resonate with my stories, then those people are not for me. And I have to find the people who have similar stories or who can appreciate my stories or who can relate to my stories.
Okay, how do you find it? How do you find those people? Or how do
Do you
you
want?
know that they are resonating with you?
Hmm. So I think the short answer is that you know people are relating to your stories or you know you found your audience when they say, "Oh, I thought that was just me," or "Oh, that happened to you too." Same here. Um, yeah, I feel like that's kind of what you're looking for. You're looking for alignment, right? Um, and then also the second clue or the second hint that you know that you found your audience is that they're they want to know more. They're curious. They want to ask you more about your story, or maybe it's because they know someone who's been through that and they've always been curious about some particular thing. And so I think you know you found your audience when they start interacting with your story in a way that feels like you're having um, an exchange of uh, human connection, an exchange of familiarity.
And it gives them courage to, I feel, it gives them courage to tell their stories, because if there is a story which I have experienced or some moments, I struggled to tell it, but I gathered courage and tell it on my social or in my real life. People who are following me, they find themselves and they feel relaxed and calm. Okay, there is someone who has experienced this just like me. Now I can tell it. So that's the relationship we should build on socials as well, by telling stories.
100%.
Okay, so for example, if someone is afraid to tell the struggles, okay, but now he's learning, or suppose he's watching our podcast and he's learning that, oh, I should tell about my struggles because people will resonate. I will be able to build a community who will share same beliefs, same stories, but I'm afraid. So what will you tell to that person who is afraid of telling the struggles, because he thinks, what if I am the wrong person, I am the reason of my struggle? We all feel this. So what if the audience finds it out? He's having these kind of thoughts.
So, this is a really good question, and it's also a really good question for that person to unpack. They have to know where that fear is coming from. Because there are certain stories and certain worldviews and perspectives that are either tabooed by society, or there are very specific rules and laws around certain things that we cannot share or say. And so if the fear is, oh, you might go to jail for this, or you might you know or you might be killed for this. That's a very important fear that you shouldn't ignore, right? And create certain um, frameworks and safety networks where you can share that safely and only within a very specific community, right? And so there's that thing to consider, right? And then if the fear is something like, um, this is something that I've never shared before and I'm not sure how it's going to be received by people, then, you have to identify, okay, where is that fear coming from? Is it because this has happened to you before and it's, altered uh, your social connections, it's impacted your mental health, then you should go to therapy, right? And work that out with a trained professional to help you identify where that fear might have happened. Um, and then I think once you've surpassed all these obstacles, or these obstacles are not relevant to you, and then you realize, oh, the fear is actually just imposter syndrome. Like, oh, somebody else told it better, or people are already talking about this, um, or like, why me, right? If it is imposter syndrome, yes, you can go to therapy and do all of those things too. But for that person, I would say, why not you? You know, every person in the world is unique, and we've had different experiences, although maybe similar experiences. We all have different moments and different 5-second moments and different ways we are going to tell that story. And Elizabeth Gilbert says, she's a writer, and she says, when you are writing, yes, we should consider whether that's been written about before. But if you have to tell that story, then you should tell that story because um, there's a reason why you've been wanting to share it. So I think that's a long way to kind of say, first, identify where that fear is coming from and make sure to address the sources of that fear, work on strategies to overcome that fear, and then when you're ready, know that even if it's same or different or strange or weird, that because it's a human experience, it's part of the human experience, there will be a way to relate it to other people. And so not to worry, just to start sharing. And it's not about being perfect. It's just about building a relationship and uh, being confident that
Okay, so
your perspective matters.
can we say this, if you are afraid to tell your struggles, that means you are still struggling. So first overcome what you are struggling, and then we should tell about our struggles. Or we are still in that moment or in struggles. We have not figured it out something. We are not calm and silent about that struggle. Something still, it teases us. So we should go back and understand those struggles and figure it out, because many times, uh, we experience something, so we feel that I should have done this. We carry that regret with us, that I should have done that, I should have said that. And I think maybe that's the reason it creates some kind of fear to tell, that we are not able to tell. For example, if I have an ex and I was really bad boyfriend, now I am getting into relationship with a new girlfriend, I want I will be scared to tell about my past relationship mistakes, because I was wrong there. I'm still struggling and I have regrets. Similarly, when it's on social, so maybe I am scared of that thing. What if that my new girlfriend will find out? What happens, my audience will find it out. But I think that's why sharing stories teaches you much more than just storytelling, because when you are trying to tell a story about your struggle, you find out I am still struggling, I have not overcome that struggle. So you will heal yourself in that journey to tell a specific story to the people. And that's when you will tell that story, that's why it gives courage to other peoples, because you gathered courage to tell that story after solving everything.
Yes. And I think you can share your story even when you're going through the struggle, but I think you have to know why you're telling the story, right? If and you have to be cognizant of what the potential response could be to that story. And so if you're telling that story because you're working through it, I think you have to identify and notify other people, okay, I'm still working through this story. I'm still trying to figure it out. Um, it's not finished. Maybe, and then also, if you're telling a story, you have to know whether that audience is ready for that story, or and if yeah, it gets really tricky. Like, I'm not going to tell a story that I know that maybe my husband is not going to understand, because I'm not going to get the sympathy that I'm looking for, or the empathy that I'm looking for, right? But if I go to like my girlfriend and I tell her, hey, I went through this thing, and um, I know she's going to understand because she's been there before. And so what I'm looking for is empathy, then I'm not going to go to my husband. I'm going to go to my friend, right? So I think you have to choose what story you're telling for the audience that you're telling the story to.
Okay, so my question to you is about is have you ever cried while telling stories? Your story, any kind of story.
Well, so I've been in therapy for about almost 5 years, and I always cry when I'm telling my story to my therapist. Um, always. I'm always crying. And even with my husband, sometimes I cry. Um, and then sometimes with certain very, very close friends, actually, with other people, I don't tell those stories. I don't tend
O-
to tell
Okay,
the, yeah.
what if you tell those stories to other friends? Will you, what do you think? Will you cry?
No.
Okay,
And the reason is because I don't tell stories. So I'm very scared of social interactions. I'm not very good in social settings, and so for me personally, I'm not able to share stories that I know is going to make me cry with people outside of my really, really close network of people I know that I can trust with my stories.
okay. I asked this question because Sun was talking about vulnerability,
Mm-hmm.
and he said that it's most of people on social media as well as in real life that they think that if there is an emotional story, or if there is some kind of story, or if there is not a story, but what they think is that crying or being emotional on social media is vulnerability, is the meaning of being vulnerable. But the meaning is that you are telling a story, and now you can't stop that tears. You hate to cry, but now you can't stop that, and you are trying your hard not to cry, and people out there watching you, and they are crying because you are struggling not to cry, or they are seeing and feeling that pain. So he said that this is a vulnerable moment which doesn't happen daily, but if it happens, people will always love you, and they will build that connection with you, not in
It's
on just
true.
social but in real life as well.
Yeah, I
That's why I
agree.
asked this question.
Yeah. I mean, that is to say, like, if you are telling your story and you think you've overcome that. So I was just speaking with one of the Night Owl members, Yelena, and she said to me that we are always constantly healing. And, like, there isn't really an end point to healing. Even if we've healed something, it's possible to go back to a point in time where we remember how it felt, and that could make us emotional or trigger us. And so I think it's true that when we're telling a story, it's possible that we're going to get caught up in that moment again and we might cry, and that's okay. Um, and that's definitely okay. And you're right, and Sun is right, that people do appreciate those moments because those feel very vulnerable. Those feel very relatable. Um, but I think if you go into social media or into the public wanting to tell your story,
Mm. Yeah.
wanting to cry,
Yeah,
that I
that's
think
the
does
wrong
not
way.
feel
You
real.
know that you will cry while telling the story. That's a wrong way. If you know
Yeah,
that, then you won't tell that story. For example,
right.
you start telling a story and you thought that you will make it, but you failed to make it, and now your voice is crumbling and you're trying your hard to come up with words, but you are still doing it. I think
Yeah.
that's where people will connect with you.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's talk about you have talked about taking pictures on your social media. So let's talk about this a little bit. So how do I just starting out my podcasting, as I said that I just like to ask questions. So I don't know anything about cameras, how to put the cameras or even the lighting. I don't know anything of this. So how to create good videos with phone, or how to learn it, because many people or many new boys and girls who start, they don't have a camera, they just have phone. So how to learn it,
Mm,
what things we should keep in mind according to you?
okay. This is a huge question. And I have like 50 different answers I want to say, but I think I'm going to group it into two things. One is if you're completely new and you are kind of experimental and you are willing to make mistakes, I would say just do the next thing that you find interesting, right? So if you are thinking, okay, okay, there's camera, there's sound, there's lighting, there's composition. Okay, that's all crazy. Just do the first thing, which is to start filming. Um, and as you start filming, you're going to realize, oh, I don't like it when I sit here because the lighting makes me look a little bit larger. Or I don't like it when the camera is here because the subtitles get pushed down so far low, right? And so, by way of convenience or by way of your preferences, all of the different pieces are going to start to come into place. And then once you have the basics, once you have basic preferences, and you are able to take on more, like you're able to use more of your brain space on uh, making it more visually interesting, that's when I would start studying other people, read books, or just start following different social media accounts, or start analyzing why you prefer certain videos over others. And then you'll start seeing, oh, you know what, I like that this influencer is using this angle, or I like the lighting that this director is using in his movies, or oh, it's so interesting that editing technique that the match cut, right, they show a video and then all of a sudden now the video is gone and now this is there. So as your basic knowledge develops, your brain will free up more space to have more like luxury items like composition and lighting. And so it's a really long process, but I would recommend that process because then you're not copying someone's style specifically. You're creating and finding your own voice as you go. That said, if you want a shortcut, find someone that you respect and copy them. And then after a certain time, move on to another person, copy them. And so, like, maybe start with five different people that you respect in that arena. And each week, just copy everything that they've done and then move on to the next person the next week. And then as you copy, you will find, oh, actually, you'll learn how to do what they did because you're teaching yourself what they did. You're reverse engineering. But then over time, after you've copied five things, you'll be like, you know what? I'm going to copy, or I'm going to take this, I'm going to take this, and then I'm going to bring this other thing that I like. And then you'll create your own sort of, I guess, process. So I think those are
Okay.
the two methods I would recommend.
Give me a minute. I'm plugging my charger. My battery is low.
Sure.
Okay. So thank you for answering it. So you talked about forming your style in in filming a video. So what makes your style? Like you said, reverse engineer and copy it, and that's a good way to learn as well. For example, there is someone I follow and I copy him, and I succeeded in copying him. Whatever he did, I did it and I learned it. Now I am thinking, okay, I learned it. Now I don't want to copy him because I know the things. Now I want to create something my own or something my style which will define me. So how to do that? Now I know the skill. A few months back or few years back, I didn't know any skill because I was beginner. Now I know the skill because I copied someone. But now I'm struggling. That I'm still struggling. What's my style? So what would you advise to that person?
Well, my advice to this person is that you have to move on to the next thing. So I would say the next step for this person is to identify what is it about your old style that you don't like um, anymore, or what is the reason why it is no longer serving you. And that answer can be very varied, right? It could be as simple as technique. It could also be something about like uh, so it could be visual technique, it could be sort of like the philosophy, it could also be a visual aesthetic. It can be anything really that, but I think so try to identify what is it about your old style that you used to like that you no longer like. And then what I would recommend to this person is to look for inspiration, and to go out and look for things that you like more now. And so go and find that second mentor or that second person to copy And you don't have to copy that person exactly, but maybe just pull a few elements. Or if you don't want to go the copy route, another form of inspiration is to look for new technology. Um, so when I was first starting out, I was using Final Cut Pro 7, and then I moved on to Adobe Premiere, and then Final Cut 10 happened, and then I got really upset because it just felt like iMovie. And so that's why I 100% crossed over to Premiere. But once I found Premiere, they had all these other templates built in that were new and interesting, and those were I'd never used those before, so I started using that, right? And then and then I was working at an elementary school for a while, and they used a different program. So then I learned that, and then those came up with a bunch of different templates. And so then I started using those templates because those were pretty easy. And then I was working, and then I went to film school, and then we were using DaVinci Resolve, and that didn't have a lot of templates, and so it forced me to use um, my old styles and bring in the different styles that I used in my previous um, projects, and I started bringing those in. And then I started using Illustrator to create my own designs because I had my own philosophy. So once you move on from technology, they have certain limitations. And I mean, yes, there are limitations, but they also give you new departure points. And then you can customize and tweak.
Okay, thank you. So, is there anything you want to ask me?
Yes, I'm curious. So you asked me several questions. And so I can tell that there is a path. You're on the path of trying to find your voice and trying to find your community of people. You're trying to find your audience. And so, one of the questions that I have for you is, do you know what your why is? Or are you looking for that too?
Uh, when I started, I didn't have any why because I just I just liked talking to people. And when I joined Night Owl Nation, so I didn't know about storytelling with business. I knew storytelling as a just an art or just doing it because I like it, telling stories or writing poems or some you know life stories. But when I thought it son is teaching that thing, and I joined it just because he's telling storytelling, he's teaching storytelling. So when I joined it, I go through a lot of classes and I understood, okay, you can connect storytelling with your business in your content creation, you can create content about that as well. And then I learned about that you don't need any why and anything when you are starting out. So a lot of people ask me that what's your goal. To be honest, there is there is not a goal right now. There is no why. For example, I asked you, you said a series of questions. The thing is, I didn't prepare questions. I prepared just two questions. That what is first question, what does it mean to be a storyteller? And when I talked to you, the questions came up in my mind, and I think twice or I think two times you said it's a good question, great question. And even when I was on Sun podcast, he texted me on Instagram that your questions were great. A lot of people says to me that you are good at asking questions because maybe I'm good at understanding the emotions you are putting in your words while you are speaking, and I'm good at feeling it. So by feeling it, I ask another question. So that's I'm good at, and I like to do it. For example, when I record it, I'll edit it. When I will listen to this podcast on YouTube, when I'll upload it, I'll be so much happy. So right now, this thing is is the reason I am doing all of this. And of course there is different reason that I'm learning about content creation, marketing, and building audiences and how to monetize audiences. I'm learning all of these things. And so this is my reason of doing it. And I didn't know even I started podcast because son told us there's for some classes. So I started it because he told us. And when I started it, my when I had my first Before starting my podcast, I was on Sun podcast, and I felt very good because a lot of people appreciated me in Night Owl Nation as well. That you asked good questions, you asked very questions a beginners has when he's starting out. And I thought, okay, let's try it out with some other people. And I went on podcast with other people. They also praised me. And even there were now Sun told me that if you want to learn how to build, as I told you as well, that I'm trying to help people in starting their content creation journey. Like for example, as we talked about, people have stories they want to share, but they are scared. So I'm helping them to tell their stories, if by writing or by creating content, by copywriting or anything. I'm not I always say to them that I will not teach you about how to grow, because I'm still learning that how to grow podcast and how to grow Instagram. But I have conquered, or what I have achieved, that I started messy with, not the right camera, with not the right lighting, with not right the mic, but I'm starting, and people are appreciating it.
Yeah.
So you can achieve that too, and I'm helping you in that. Sun told me to help around 100 people, so I am helping them, and I'm feeling so good that they are listening, and I'm helping them, and they are getting impressed by me. So I think that's another feeling. So these all feelings and these all little things is the reason why I'm doing a podcast, and I think this is my why. If I put this way, that now I think I have a why, that I like it, and I love asking questions, and people who I'm helping, they are getting better, and I'm creating an impact. So I think that's what my why is.
Yeah, I think we cannot doubt the power of asking right and good and deep and profound questions. And I think of all of my years of teaching, you can teach someone so many different skills. But the one thing that is really difficult to teach someone is how to ask questions. So I just want to say that if you're good at that, your life, you're already set.
Yeah, I am now, when I knew this thing about me, that I'm good at asking questions, now I'm trying to learn, how to be articulate with your words, how to speak fluently without, pausing, without that and I'm learning it little by little, and learning how to use the right word at the right situation, which can change people's life. We saw a
Right.
lot of leaders and a lot of speakers, when they say, people listen, and it actually changes their life. Because those,
Yes.
we say that, for example, we are at our lowest moment, and we know what we need to hear, but we don't say to ourselves, when someone, our loved ones, comes to us and says that exact same words which we want to hear, but we don't know it, so that it changes us. For example, you may have heard stories that, okay, then that day my father told me this, and everything changed, everything around me changed. I started looking things differently, because there were that word and emotions. So when people told me, you are good at it, and I'm trying to learn it, and I think that's what Sun taught us, and that's what that's what finding your voice, right? I didn't know that I am good at this. I thought it's okay, but when I started my podcast, recorded my first episode, I came to know this thing about me. And there are a lot of things which I think that I will be able to know about me. That's why I'm trying to reach out to everyone, like you are in visual storytelling. So we talked about art. I also have some childhood trauma, so that's why I was able to ask some questions. So this is how I am, touching every part or exploring every part of my life by talking to the people who in different fields, to find out what's there which can make me better person. And yeah, so that's why I'm doing it.
Yes, 100%. And I think, it's also, you say you're trying to help people and you're trying to help 100 people. And I think I wanted to say, I think it's important to know that help comes in very different forms. And so you might think you know what you're doing or how you think you're helping somebody. But sometimes I want to also say that we also help people in ways that we don't even understand. So sometimes, like, you might think, okay, today I'm going to teach you how to do this, but that's not what that person is going to learn from you. They're going to learn something completely different, and that's okay. And so I think as long as you are being honest in your journey and uh, just following what you're curious about and allowing your curiosity to lead you to the next thing, I think you have to trust that you're helping somebody,
Yeah.
even if you don't know if that you're helping that person.
Yeah, that's a good observation, I think. And when I help two people by now, I think two or three people by now, and I have learned a lot about them, because one thing happened with my last podcast episode. There was some guy, and he is also into filmmaking. He creates videos around filmmaking. So he texted me. I was thinking that what can I help him, because he's already editing good videos, creating good content. He wants my help. He came because he saw some reels and I was selling some insight thing. He found it very insightful and he came up to me. I took 1 week and I studied everything what I can help him with. I studied his videos, his style. And when I told him, I talked about two things, that your storytelling and how he, and after observing his video, I found that he's not paying attention to how to grow on YouTube. He's not understanding YouTube as a platform. You are an artist, and that's what I understand. But if your goal is to grow on YouTube as an artist, so you have to understand and learn YouTube as well. So when I told him, he said that I didn't think this that way. I didn't think about learning YouTube as a platform. He was good at what he does. And the second thing, I talked about storytelling. So he found that as well valuable, and he said that it really helped me. So I thought, and I was really shocked, because I thought that this will be average podcast. He won't find me. He will think that he's just scamming or just telling to help in free. He doesn't know anything. But I tried my best, because I said that I'll help, and he found it very insightful, and he was really impressed that he invited me to his house. He's in different city. He was really impressed. So I was feeling good, and I didn't know this thing, that I may help to those people, but I helped them eventually. So I
Yeah,
think this is the beauty of helping other people, and I would say beauty of podcasting.
absolutely. And so, I don't know, my throat's doing this weird thing. I don't usually cough. Anyway, yeah, so I just want to say, just keep doing what you're doing. And it sounds like, uh, so there's something that you said that reminds me of something that Sun does. And I always think he's so generous because he does this. But he doesn't just uh, help you with what, I don't know how to explain this. Okay. I think Sun is very generous because he helps you with everything he knows how to do. So if you come to him with one thing, he's not just going to try and solve that one thing. He's going to come at you with all these other different points, and he's going to try to help you figure out where you need help first before we can get to that other thing. And I can kind of see that with how you are questioning and how you see, and maybe how you help that other filmmaker, that even though you may not be thinking that you're solving one particular problem, you're just going to try and use your entire brain, knowing everything that you know, to try and tackle the whole picture and look at the whole picture to see, systematically what needs to come next. So I think a lot of people are going to appreciate what you're doing, and I wish you very much luck on your
Yeah.
podcasting journey and also on your
And
journey.
as you said about Sun, after doing my two, I think three episodes, what I have realized that bringing them on my podcast or helping them is not enough. What I have to do is, it's true that if many people come on podcasts, they learn everything. get everything, and they still live that same life. They don't,
Mhm.
it means they don't take action. So I am still working on it, that creating some framework that will force them to take action whatever I'm telling them, because that will create an impact. Just bringing them on my podcast and creating videos will not impact their lives, because I learned this thing while creating content, that you can talk about different things, but you are, we talk about different things, but are you talking about something which will force them to take action for the right thing? Okay, they can't sleep because they didn't take action. I'm not that influential with my words, but I'm learning that if I say, like Sun says to us, like I said, that I started podcast because of Sun, because he told us, and I want as a respect that I should. And it turned out beautiful, it turned out something good to me. So that's what I am learning, that they respect the thing I'm providing them. So I have not achieved it yet, but I'm trying to create some framework or a community where I'll tell them and they will do it. And I will again, because when they will do it, they have lots of questions. They will come to me. For example, they're coming on podcast, they don't know anything. They even ask, they just ask question, a series of questions which they are struggling. For example, when I was on Sun podcast, I have different question, and now I will, after implementing what he told me, I have different questions now about podcasting, about people, about marketing. So now if I will go again, I'll have again lots of questions. So don't, no one, and I think they will contact me. And some, there is a girl whom I helped, he contacted me, he talked about different, that I am facing these issues, and I helped her again. And that's where I realized only she contacted me back, not other people. That means they are not taking action. So that's where I realized, okay, I need to create framework. And I think that's where I'm learning, right? There is a one situation where someone is telling that you have to learn as a marketer or as a podcaster, that you have to help them by making them take action. This is something I just hear in a video, or Sun told us. This is the first case in which I'm learning this, and this is the second case where I felt this, realized this. When someone contacted me back, only one person contacted me back, another person didn't. That's where I realized that I am not doing the right thing. So I think when you feel the thing, you do the thing. And when you just hear it, you don't feel it. Or I'm not saying don't hear it. When you hear it, start to implement it to feel.
Mhm.
So I think talking like this, listening like this, and this is what makes me happy.
Yeah. And I will say one last thing is that even when you build a framework, uh, that taking the action is not something that is very easy
Mm.
for you to convince. So I've taught students for 15 years, and I just want to share that you can build as many frameworks as you want, and those things are really helpful if you're walking with them on that path. It's very helpful to have a framework so that you don't leave any stones unturned. But for them to apply what they've learned after they've walked with you through that framework, that is ultimately their choice. And
Mm.
I want to say that I don't know what the percentage is, but the majority of students that I have taught have not completely benefited from my frameworks. But there are
Mm.
at least a handful, or maybe 10 or 15 students, maybe more, who I feel like my frameworks really helped them. So if at ever some point in your life that you think, I'm not being effective, my framework is not working, I want you to know, don't be discouraged. The people who are meant to be inspired by you will be there, and the people,
Mm.
but the majority of people will just take something from you and maybe not implement everything that you tell them.
Okay. So I think we is there anything else you want to ask?
No, but I think this was a really great podcast episode, and I appreciate you having me on. This was a great conversation, and I look forward to um, other questions that you may ask other people in the future.
Okay. So we can end the podcast. And at last, I would say
Yes.
thank you so much for coming here. I think I'm thanking everyone who is saying yes to come on my podcast and enhancing my skill and teaching me different things. And you said that I am not enough to teach, or I'm just here for discussion. But to be honest, you really taught me different things. And thank you so much for that. And yeah, thank you. So,
Thank you, Shishir. It was so great to have this conversation with you. Take care.
okay. Okay. Bye.
Bye.